Welcome to the Soul Tribe Podcast. The Soul Tribe Podcast was created to help you navigate through the world of spirituality, wellness, and self-development in an easy, grounded, and relatable way. We break down everything from the Akashic Records, manifesting, spirituality, and so much more. We want to help expand your boundaries and bring the spiritual world to you in a fun and easy way. Get ready to be inspired with tips, tools, and easy to digest information. Let's do this.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to the Soul Tribe Podcast. We are talking about anxiety and how it's linked to spirituality, and hopefully give you some useful tips on how to handle anxiety if you do have it, or what to do so you don't get to that point, because you can actually save yourself from that, right? If you do the right things, if you listen to yourself the right way. But we'll go through all that in the episode. We'll also give experiences about our own situations with previous anxiety. Lorena still has some present anxiety at times. So we'll talk about that and how we handled it and where we think it comes from. But more importantly, to start, I would like to kind of give an intro about how the Akashic Records see anxiety. And so the Akashic Records would say that anxiety is a bodily indication of your soul letting you know that there's something pending in your past, present, that needs to be cleansed, unblocked, or dealt with. So it's not the body attacking you. It's not the body going against you. And it's not the body telling you you're wrong or you're doing it wrong. It's your body trying to help you get back in line with yourself, with your plan, with your higher plans, or it's trying to push you to do the right thing for yourself. So it's always for your greater good. And I'm saying this with my Akashic Records open. So this is a message from the masters in general, letting everybody know that anxiety isn't a disease, because I think I've heard people talk about that and say that anxiety is considered, almost like a disease, just something normal these days. But the Akashic Records are very clear to indicate that it's a bodily indication of something that's being blocked, or not allowing you to progress in your greater path. So it's for your own good that you're getting those signals. It's for you to listen to yourself. It's a very low level aha moment or wake up call. So take that, listen to yourself, note it, do whatever you have to do to pay attention to it, and don't dismiss it like, or I'll take pills to diet down, or I'll just breathe through it and then go away. Figure out when did it activate? When did it start? Start linking together, start journaling about it, to figure out what is activating it, because it does come at precise moments. You might find maybe it's comes at moments where you're being pushed to do something, and maybe what you're being pushed to do happens more frequently and you're not supposed to do that. Maybe you're at a job that no longer is on your path. Whatever it is, it's up to you to figure it out and listen to that wake-up call, because it's being given to you by your soul. It's being given to you by your masters, and it's being given to you for your own greater good. So it's almost like a loving nudge towards the right direction for yourself. So those are the messages from like the masters in general. And so I wanted to talk about, I think it's a good thing to, picking up from there, talk about one of my, I don't know if I would call it anxiety moments, but Lorena, do you remember when I talked about this when I was 7 years old, that experience I had? Would you say that that's kind of anxiety?
I think, it could be a form of anxiety, yeah. I think it's something very linked to spirituality, but your physical reaction to it was definitely something of anxiety. So yeah, I would definitely label it something along those lines for sure.
Yeah. So I'm going to describe what happened. I remember clearly, like, those moments in life that you remember with detail. I remember walking. I don't remember what I had on because I wasn't physically looking down at my, my pants or my shirt, but I remember the little path I took from the kitchen to the house we were living at the time. And I remember walking down and going down the stairs into the living room, past the living room, and then I walked into a room, and then our room had, I don't know if you remember, Lo, you'd walk in and then go to the right and you'd have these steps up. And I think it was about 3 steps. It was 3 or 4 steps, and you'd go up, very small steps, and you'd have this long mirror. So it was a full-length mirror that my mom had put there. And I remember it's green. It was wood. I remember the top was like roundish. So I remember the whole thing. And that mirror has been there for, I don't know, years maybe. It was been there for a long time. So it wasn't not normal to catch yourself in the mirror when you're going up the stairs. But this one day, I slowly walk up the steps and I looked at myself and I just started going, oh my God. I remember grabbing my 2 hands, and I'm 7, so I'm like not understanding what I'm feeling, and I can't physically know what it is that's going on with me, but I know that I felt trapped. I felt the feeling of being stuck in whatever it is that was my body. And I was like, oh my God. I was touching my shoulders with my hands, and I started touching my legs, and I remember going close to the mirror and touching my face and going, this is my face? This is my face right now? Like, this isn't me? What am I doing in here? Oh my God, I'm stuck in this body. This isn't me. And I don't even know how long it lasted, but it had the strongest impression on me because for the first time and the only time in my entire life, I felt stuck in what was my body, right? And I kept it to myself, but I remember feeling nervous. And I think it might have been some sort of anxiety, but I was too young to know what anxiety was. But I remember feeling nervous and feeling stuck. And I was having a semi-freak out on my own in the room. And I'm 7, and it was all new to me, and it was all different. But I didn't know that it was weird because I'm 7. I don't know what's normal. I'm figuring out life just like everyone else that's 7 is. So I just kept it to myself because I was like, oh, I guess everybody goes through this at some point, or I don't even know what this is anyways. And I never said anything to you till we were much older. I never said anything to Mom. I remember we used to talk to Mom all the time. And I did go to the Akashic Records after I had started having my dreams, my premonitions. The first session I ever had with the reader, that was one of the questions I wrote down. I said, "What is this? What is this that I had when I was 7? And what was the purpose of it?" Right? And the reader, remember, told me, "You just saw yourself for what you really are, which is a soul." Incarnated in a body, and you recognized yourself. That's the moment you caught yourself in the mirror and you glanced and you said, what? This isn't me. And because you actually knew what you were at the time. You knew you were more than that, not just the body. And so, but then the mental jumped in right after that. After I caught myself, the mental jumped in going, oh my God, I'm stuck. Oh my God. And that's the anxiety. That was my bodily reaction to a spiritual experience. So I think that's my anxiety post spirituality. And it's also really important to note that I was 7 years old. And so the Akashic Records will talk about many times how children their crown chakra is still, now I'm saying it in Spanish, their crown chakra is still open till they're about 7. So the reason for that is there's still adaptations to your spiritual contract. There's still changes going on. There's still karmic lessons being pre-planned or post-planned or whatever. So you're still very connected, which is a lot of times why children are really good at noticing things, seeing things, feeling things. It could be they can see angels, they can see, ghosts, they can see unincarnated bodies, whatever, but they can see these things that we adults can't see anymore because we're totally closed off from it. And that's because their crown chakra is still open. So they're still very much connected to that other higher realms, right? And that moment that I caught myself was actually the week that my crown chakra was starting to close. And it was my spiritual freak out because I knew that I was going to be less connected from that day on. And so I called myself, and then that whole thing happened. And I was 7. I didn't figure it out till, many years later. And my soul was freaking out because my soul knew that I was going to be less connected until whatever my plan was, which was when I was going to read the Akashic Records. And that was going to be 20 years on, right? So it was my soul freaking out, losing connection. But in my contract, it was already put down that I was going to reconnect. So it was it was the anxiety of not knowing if it was going to happen, because we also have free will. I could have decided not to go down that path, even if I had premonitions that pushed me towards it. So my wake-up call was the premonitions. Some people's wake-up call to wake up to something and be more enlightened is anxiety, right? So that was my huge first somewhat experience with anxiety and the spiritual world at the same time, and how I was connected for me. But yours experiences are totally different, because yours, Lorena, are more, I think it's more when you're in certain places in certain situations. What is it that happens for you exactly?
Yeah, mine are very different from yours. But before I go on to that, I just want to say something, because I think it's so important to make sure that we touch on this, and we'll probably get into a whole episode about this, but I think we shouldn't ignore it, is what you were saying about children being so connected to this higher realm and to maybe spirits and to this knowledge, and they can see things that we don't, and how parents or adults can sometimes block that just by telling, no, you're just imagining things. Oh, that's just your imaginary friend. Or no, that's just something that you're thinking of. Where did you see that? And then we can maybe make it worse. We can block them from this path that they might be taking that might be very enlightened, and they could be such like very awakened beings in this life that we're living, and maybe we block them. So I think we need to be very careful with that. I just wanted to make a note of that, because I know there might be a lot of people listening that, you know, they might be parents, or they're thinking about being parents, and I think it's something to keep in mind, and not to brush off these things that they say, because it could help them in some way later on to believe in themselves too, because you're kind of just brushing it off like, oh, you're just crazy. No, that didn't really happen. You didn't really see that, or you didn't really feel that, you know?
Yeah, that's a really good thing that you pointed out, because especially nowadays, those that are having children will find that the era of the children that are coming in are much more connected and much more enlightened than we are. And they're actually here to help awaken that. And they need our support, because they're supposed to follow that path. I know a good example of that is my friend Julio. Like Julio, he grew up and he would see things, and his, you know, like most parents, they just thought it was a really, you know, imaginative child, or they didn't believe him, or he was making it up, or, you know, maybe sometimes children see a movie and they just brought that movie into their reality somehow, and they're scared. And he struggled through this for years, and his parents never really believed him those years when he was really young. And he would be fearful, and he felt alone, and no one was listening to him. So, like you said, it's really important that parents at least give it a space. Maybe if they don't believe it even, they should acknowledge it as something and try to make sure that they can help them out in any way possible, even if it's making them feel less alone. But it is important that, especially nowadays, like I said, the enlightened children that are coming in, it's really important that parents support that, whatever it is that the child is getting, because their enlightenment can come in many different ways, you know? So yeah, that's a really good point, Lo. Thanks for saying that.
So, yeah, with regards to my own anxiety kind of experience, for me, it started in a different way, but I'll get into that a little bit later. But I think it's triggered when I hold in emotions a lot of times, if I do not say what I'm feeling, or if I go through something so much that I don't have time to process it, for example. Or I think another good example is pushing myself a little too hard with things, or expecting too much of myself. A good example is also the dentist. The other day when I went to the dentist, it was 2 times, and I think it was in the span of probably 2 months, with a month difference in between, and I had like full-blown panic attacks. I left the dentist shaking and crying. And it's also that control, like I lost control of the situation, and I feel like in some way it made me feel scared. I will also get that way when I'm very scared of something, like, for example, the waves. I've gone out paddleboarding with Joe a bunch of times, and I don't think he quite grasped how scared I was of the waves. And a few times we went out and, you know, waves picked up while we were out paddleboarding, which I love, just paddleboarding on like, you know, smooth water. That's fine for me. But as soon as I see a wave, the panic just takes over and I start crying and I freak out and I think I'm going to die. I literally think I'm going to die. It's basically not being present, because when you're thinking about what's going to happen, that's when it starts getting worse, for me at least. Just thinking of the worst case scenario, thinking of, oh my God, like this might be the last day I'm alive, or this must be like the last thing I'm going to live through. But
you do that with like other people around you. You did that with me a few times when I was young. Where you're like, oh my God, you're dying.
Oh my God, yeah. Like with the day with the sled, when you went down and,
you
weren't breathing, she got the wind knocked out of her, and she was like gasping for air. And we were with our best friend Erin. It was the three of us, and it was winter's beautiful. We were sleigh riding, and I freaked out, and I'm like, she's my sister. She's gonna die. I don't deal with emergency situations very well. I was actually thinking about that this morning when we were watching this episode of like these prank things on Netflix. But yeah, for me, different things trigger it. But my initial first ever anxiety attack, which happened, that was before a move that we did in New York, because we grew up in New York, was, I think, and if I look back, I'm convinced, because that's what happened later on as well. It's the emotional side of stuff for me. It's holding in. It's my throat chakra. It's not saying what I have to say. It's holding things in. That's what it is for me. Like, and I'm glad that I've gotten to a point in my life where I can recognize that, and that I know that that's what's going on. But I think that we all need to really be patient with ourselves with that, because it could take years. For me, it took years. Like even my panic attacks and depression, it took years for me to get that diagnosed. I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was just going crazy. And I didn't know how to put it into words to explain it to my mother or my father, or say, I remember saying to my friend, a few friends, saying, do you guys ever feel like everything's fuzzy? Like you're there, but you're not there. Like you're seeing things in a different way. And I remember I couldn't eat. Like I kept feeling like this thing was in my throat. And that was probably the words I wasn't getting out. And I couldn't swallow. And I kept having this ridiculous fear of like choking. And it was probably like spiritually thinking of it's choking on my words, because I wasn't letting anything out. Like now that I look back, I have that insight on it. But at the moment, all you know is I felt like an outsider. I felt like no one understood me, also because I wasn't saying anything. And that there was something wrong with me, and that I was weird. And I feel like a lot of people might be going through that. So I think it's good to know, like, you're not alone. Everyone's experience with anxiety, depression, whatever, is different. So I think a good place, or a place where I do get anxiety as well, is in very crowded or busy areas where there's a lot going on, and then it kind of drains my energy as well. Like that's happened to me before. Or even like claustrophobia. I think once or twice I've gotten, not so much now, but yeah, that's it. That's also like a good place where it could act up, right?
That's important, like, to talk about crowded places, because I've had various Akashic Records readings, and I've found that there were similarities in some of those readings of those people that had issues with crowded places also. They might have described it a little bit different from you. Some of them would say that they would go to crowded places and they came back home and they were exhausted, or they would get anxious before going, knowing that they were going to be in a really crowded place, or that they would get anxious while they were there, or once they were there, they felt overwhelmed and they couldn't pinpoint what it was they were feeling. Or they would just start feeling negative or bad or in a bad mood or too upset, and it wasn't theirs and they didn't know what it was. So, I mean, there's many different situations that were described, but I remember that most of the times when the individual got a reading and it was about crowded places and something related to crowded places and anxiety, usually it is that person has an ability, which is either empathetic. They're some sort of clairvoyant. There's some sort of medium. They can somehow connect with other people's energy. They can help. They can be a cleanser. They can be one of those people that absorb your negative energy from your aura into their aura, but they didn't know they have that, so they don't know how to get rid of it. So there's a totally different reasons for each of those individuals that had that issue. But the similarities in it is they were all capable of doing something beyond their bodily senses, because we have more senses, right? Besides touch, feel, hear, smell, taste, we also have other senses that are our spiritual senses, right? And these people, you usually do have at least one. You just don't know which one you're good at or which one you came and incarnated with. So you have to figure it out. And sometimes some people never will figure it out because it's not part of their path, or because they just never awaken to the spiritual path. But if it's very strong, because it's probably in your contract that it's going to wake up, you're probably one of those individuals that haven't picked up on it yet. And you don't know what it is or why it is. And it's probably going to flare up when you're in crowded places because you're getting bombarded. That sense, that special spiritual sense that you have that's not fully active but partially active and totally not controlled by you yet, is being bombarded by other people's emotions, feelings, thoughts, auric fields, auric energy, negative energies, whatever it is. And so that's another thing that I would say. If you're one of those people that are having issues in crowded places, pinpoint what it is that you're picking up. Try to pinpoint what it is that you're feeling, and figure out, is it that I'm absorbing other people's emotions, negative emotions? Am I cleansing other people's emotions for them? Is it that I'm somehow, telepathically receiving information from them, or spiritually receiving information? Whatever it is, try to figure it out so that you can learn to control it. The key is knowledge, right? Knowledge will always help you control it, and to the point where you're going to know exactly how you receive it, how to maintain it, and how to get rid of whatever needs to be rid of. For example, negative energy. You're not gonna absorb negative energy for other individuals and keep it, because that's definitely something you don't want. So I would say that if you have that sort of anxiety, be really careful and take care of yourself and try to figure out what it is, because it could be one of those, right?
For sure. I think that's a really good point. And I do feel like for me, it's always affected me because I am an empathetic person, to the point where it's actually made me sick. Like, I feel what the other person's feeling, or I can absorb some of that stuff. And I've realized that. So I think it's helped me deal with it in a different way. But a lot of times I'll forget it, or I won't realize that I'm putting myself in a situation where it could affect me, and it just slips my mind. And then I'm like, why do I feel so tired? I get headaches. I'll feel completely drained, And that was a big worry of mine. I think when I was going to start doing other people's Akashic Records, I was like, oh my gosh, if I already feel this horrible when I go out sometimes, or when I do these things or those things, like, what will the Akashic Records do to me? Like, will that make me feel even worse and just totally unaligned with myself? Will it make me feel like I'm gonna get sick or something,
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah. And you are a very empathetic person, and I'm sure that you're absorbing some of that stuff. I'm not. I remember we did a Hermetic class, I think you remember, in Uruguay, where we taught how to protect yourself, and there was a bunch of signs and stuff. You should start using those again.
Oh my God, that's so weird, because Mom actually found all of the notes from the class, and I forgot it.
Coincidence? I think not.
I did that class. Yeah, that's so weird.
Yeah.
And I told Mom, I'm like, Mom, I want you to send me all those things, because I need to relearn all of that again for sure.
Yeah. But the go-to one that's the easiest to do, that you don't have to study to learn it, is the bubble. Put yourself, remember, you have an aura, you're an auric field. You have your aura expands outside of your, what your body is. And anybody that comes into proximity to it, there'll be an exchange of energies, right? So the best way to protect yourself is to put either the white bubble protection around you, and if you're not very good at like, you know, remembering things, like reciting things, just imagine the white bubble around you. Intention is what creates that bubble for you. So just put the bubble around you, let it be white or let it be gold, which is the better color of protection, whichever it is. But do it before you leave the house. Sometimes I'll actually leave the house and forget to do it, and I'll be like cycling and I'll be like, oh no, I didn't do the bubble. And then I'll be in the middle of cycling and I'll be doing the bubble in my head, reciting the whole like prayer thing and everything. And I'm like, man, if someone could record my head right now, I'd probably look really crazy, just biking with Aurora in the back and putting the bubble around me. But man, hey, I do what I can to make sure that other people's energy doesn't get mine, because I work really hard to keep mine clean, man. Like I'm working really hard to unblock subconscious stuff, and I'm working really hard to unblock energetic blockages from when we were younger and when we moved around a lot and all that stuff that happened to us. And it's really important. Like, if you're working on stuff to be better, why are you going to absorb other things from other people unintentionally? Protect yourself.
Yeah,
I'm sure that if you Google it, even if you have never studied it like we did, I'm sure if you Google it, you'll find a bunch of tips. Everything's out there now.
For sure. And I'm sure that certain things will work better for certain people and for certain energy and for your lifestyle. So you need to really experiment with those things and really try them out and see how you feel, and put yourself in, there's certain situations I'm sure people go through every day, like taking a subway or taking a train or taking a bus, where you might get some anxiety or you might feel completely drained. So try it in those instances where you're already doing it every day and see how different you feel every time you change it. Like, do one day where you protect yourself, another day where you don't, and be like, okay, how do I feel when I do it and when I don't do it? And then you can really like figure out what works for you. And it's really, I think that's what part of spirituality is too, right? Like trial and error. Yeah. Trying things out for yourself. And it's not what people tell you. You can't just let someone tell you, oh, you need to do this because this is good for you. Be like, well, maybe I don't need that. Maybe I can do something else and it might be just as good or even better for me.
Or you can intuitively listen to advice from someone else and go, I like what she's saying. It works for me, but I feel like I want to add this to it, or I want to take this part out of it. You have to also, that's the whole intention of it. You have to listen to yourself, and you're the only one that knows what works better for you. So take advice and adapt it to your person and adapt it to whatever feels like you said, try it out. Take it for a test drive. Did I feel differently? No, I didn't do anything. Okay, let me try something else. Oh, this really feels different. Okay, this one works for me, apparently. Like, just, try it out. Go for it. So now we've talked about certain circumstances or situations we've had that brought us anxiety. I had one when I was older, because I talked about the one when I was 7. I had one when I was older, recently, 2 years ago was it or something? When I was, when I was going through this separation with my husband, because I had found out all this stuff that he had done that I wasn't aware of, and some of them was really old, some of them was really recent stuff, but I was totally oblivious to it. And then I found, when I finally started awakening to everything that had been done behind my back in a way, I started getting really nervous, because the first thing I found out, it hurt, and it hurt really bad, and it like hit me deep, and I just cried and cried, and I felt disrespected, and I felt unloved, and I felt like I had given that one person so much of myself, and I'd done so much for that relationship. And when I married, I married forever. Like, I didn't just get married and thought, okay, well, yeah, whatever, we'll see. I went into it with like, okay, yeah, obviously if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I got married actually feeling like I wanted to be with that person for the rest of my life. So when I started finding out things, and years later, it hurt really bad, because it just shocked my, what my mental state was, as this will work. Even if something's going on in the relationship, I'm going to figure out a way to make it work. I always will. I always do. But that takes two people. And obviously one of us wasn't in for the work. One of us wasn't in to make any changes. And so the first time I found out stuff that they had done behind my back, it hurt really bad, and it was upsetting. And then it started happening maybe like once a week, where someone would come up to me like, oh, So yeah, I think I need to tell you something. And then I would hear them say his name and I need to tell you something I found out. And that's when it started happening, when people started coming to me once a week. Because after it came out, one person knew that I knew, everyone came out with their stories. Like, it's almost like everybody was waiting for the news to break so that everybody else around me could tell me that, what they knew already. And so it started becoming a thing when they would go, oh, I need to talk to you. And sometimes it wasn't even about that. It was just, I need to talk to you. And I would start, oh my God. No, okay, what am I going to find out now? It's going to hurt so much. I'm going to get so upset. And it was like a full-blown, like, nervous attack. Anytime anybody said, I need to talk to you, I was expecting news about the relationship that was going to hurt me deeply. And it went on for, I think it was like 3 or 4 months where I was just an emotional mess, to the point where I wasn't even opening up my Akashic Records. I was no longer reading anybody. I shut down in every sense. Spiritually, emotionally, I was just shutting down. And I was just dealing with the moment. I was dealing with it. And the deeper I got into it, the worse it was. And the less I could hear anybody. Sometimes I would just walk out and somebody would be in the middle of telling me something. I would be like, I'm having a panic attack. I gotta go. And I would just walk out. Like, my coworker found out a lot of stuff about it. And she would come up to me and go, okay, so I need to talk to you. And I'd be like, nope, can't handle it. And I would just walk off, Like, I would go to the bathroom and just bawl or whatever. And I'm working. Like, I'm supposed to be working and I'm supposed to be dealing with everything and try to work at the same time. It was really hard. And I didn't know what to do, and I didn't want to. I was so closed down that I didn't open up my own Akashic Records. I didn't go to that part. But I found a book. I found a book that for me was like my savior. And it's called The Love Code. And you know that I always talk about this book. And there's nothing really so different about this book. It's basically another way to reprogram your negative programs, to kind of listen more to your subconscious. It's just a different way of doing things that everybody else, like hypnosis or whatever, right? But the guy's story resonated with me. I read the book and it made me feel like I had hope. I had listened to somebody else tell me their negative experiences in the book, and I was like, I have hope too, And that became my Bible. That one book became my Bible until I finally properly left the situation, until I finally put my self-worth and myself first and my daughter first, and I walked out and I did whatever I had to do for myself, and I was finally listening to myself again, and then I was reconnecting with the Akashic Records again, right? But for me, the anxiety was so strong, I had a complete it's almost like a spiritual breakdown, right? Like, I just disconnected. Like, I just ceased to exist in any essence at all. And that was my tool. But I think that everybody will find something that will help them different, because there's not only one source out there. There's many sources out there. So whatever it is that works for you, grab onto it like your Bible and just use it to your advantage. And I think faith is what gets you through it. Knowing that whatever it is that you find that you believe in, it's going to work for you, and work on it and clean it out for yourself, because it's a lot to handle when you get to that part. It's almost like the bottom of the pit. There's nowhere else to go but up. You're going to have to deal with all those emotions and then get back up again.
Yeah. Well, you went through a lot. That was a lot. And I'm sure there's people that have gone through that and worse too. But what you said just there is important, I think, to note, that different things will work for different people. And for me, my story was a little bit different. Mine, I mean, if I think of the first time that I can recall, it was that one time that I had that big panic attack when we had just moved to Uruguay. There were instances before that, but that was the first time I actually had a bodily reaction to anxiety. It was a full-blown panic attack. I was shaking. I was scared. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't feel like anything was happening. Maybe my brain was processing things. I don't know. But I just remember waking mom and dad up. I was probably 17. Woke mom and dad up. You were by my side. And we had our dog, Toby, who was a puppy then. He was probably a few months old, like 2 months old probably. And I remember sitting in front of the fire. The dog was on me. Dad was hugging me. And no one understood what was going on. we couldn't find out what it was for years because it was just so sporadic. It would happen at the weirdest times. All I knew was I couldn't eat. I constantly felt like I had something in my throat, and for me, it was emotional, right? Like it was all the emotions I was bottling up of this huge change that we had in our lives, and I wasn't dealing with it in a healthy way. I wasn't letting stuff out. Whereas, you, Lou, you were screaming, telling people off. You're like, I don't want to go. I don't want to do this. And I was just like, well, this is what we have to do. We just have to, be positive.
Did you even cry? Did you remember crying?
I would cry from time to time, but I wouldn't really allow myself to get to that place where I've let myself kind of sink in a hole, But
yeah,
I think that was a trigger for the anxiety for me. It was the emotional side of it, not letting stuff out, and I was taking, later on, obviously when they diagnosed me, I was on antidepressants and on like 2 different types of anxiety medication, which did absolutely nothing because I'd pop those pills like there was no tomorrow, and they would not do anything to my anxiety, like literally nothing. I would feel exactly the same after I took the pill. It would just make me a little more sleepier, so I would fall asleep at night. But the anxiety itself, it would not go away. And the only time it actually started going away was when I started going to therapy. Literally after the 2nd session of therapy, which was once a week on Fridays, they went away, completely went away. I went from having anxiety every single day, like panic attacks every single day, to from 1 to 3 panic attacks a day to none, to absolutely none. So that was my indicator of, okay, I need to have a space to say what I'm feeling, let my feelings out, and even just talking about, even if it was just the silliest things I was talking about in therapy, because I wasn't in that space also to open up to someone, but just having those 45 minutes to speak to somebody that didn't know what was going on and would ask me questions, and I felt like I could talk back to them and say what really was on my mind, completely like helped me. Not to say that it didn't go on, it did keep going on, but way less. And that is literally what has gotten me, I think, partly onto the spiritual path as well, of realizing that I don't want to live in this life where I'm consumed by anxiety and worry, where I'm judging myself constantly and feeling super sad all the time. Like, no, I don't want to feel that way. I want to be alive. I want to live my life and be happy and really live up to my potential. And I think that was like a big push for me also with this self-love journey, with loving myself more and realizing that I am worth working hard to get to where I am right now. But that might be different for someone else. Like you said, for you, it was a book that helped you. For someone else, it might be an Akashic Records reading that really helps catapult their healing. For someone else, it might be something else. I don't know. It's so individual.
Yeah. I've had readings where individuals have certain parts of their body in pain or bothering them, and all they needed to do was be given information to give them to push to the right, to do the right thing for themselves, and then the pain goes away. The body was just an indicator of, hey, you're not listening to yourself, wake up. Is every body part has a connection with the spiritual world and with your internal plan. So certain places will indicate certain things for you, right? So there's a reason why this hurts or that hurts. So everything, even aside from anxiety, even general body pains can be indicators. And a good example of that is, do you remember how long my left leg, it was my knee, right under my knee, and I kept going to the doctor, and they were saying that maybe it's meniscus, but they couldn't figure out what it was. And they were saying, you're running too much, stop running. I'm like, but no, that's not a solution to stop working out. Like, no. And I didn't want to accept it. And in some Akashic Records reading, you'll get the body part talk sometimes. And I remember I got in my reading, and and I remember the reader, because this was before I became a reader myself, and the reader's like, your leg is saying to me, I'm just trying to make you do to go where you want to go. You're just making yourself do things you don't actually want to do. I'm trying to slow you down. You're going too fast. Slow down. And I was like, okay, all right, I need to listen to myself. The pain's telling me I need to listen to myself. Okay, I'm going too fast. And I tried running slower. I'm like, no, I think it's more spiritual because it wasn't working. I'm like, no, I think my leg means something more spiritual than that. Okay, what is it? And it ended up being that I was just in the wrong, I was at the wrong job and I was in the wrong country. And it didn't go away for years till I finally had like the perfect setup for myself to do the next level of growing, right? And every time I get it started hurting again when I was going through the divorce, like before it actually happened, when I was going through the whole anxiety, my legs started flaring up again. And I was like, oh no, my leg's back again, telling me that I'm not listening to myself. So it's funny, like if you become wise enough to pick up on the signals, those things will come back every time you're back in that place. Because just because you got rid of it once doesn't mean it won't come back. You might not listen to yourself again, or like you might swallow feelings again. It might come back again. That's your indicator that you need to get back on track, right, with yourself. But like you said, yeah, so different things work for different people. But once you're at a state where it's already manifesting, the best way is moving the energy, which is making changes, making mental changes, or even I'm obsessed now with angelic healing. I'm obsessed. I know, like, for a lot of people it's Reiki or yoga, but it's things. Reiki, for example, will give you energy and help you move blocks that are stuck there. And they could be blocks that are super profound, that have been there for a while, and Reiki or the angelic healing will move it, which is why sometimes they say things will get worse before they get better. You can go through a session and you'll wake up feeling maybe a little tired or drowsy or whatever, and then the next day or in a few hours you're like, oh my God, I'm worse. Like, I feel worse, or it hurts more, or or you get some sort of like the ascension flu, from the higher vibration you're getting, or whatever it is. You're moving energy, you're getting to a better level for yourself. So sometimes it gets worse when you do those things. It gets worse before it gets better. I had that with angelic healing. You've had that with acupuncture and Reiki, right?
Acupuncture. I remember the first time I ever did acupuncture, the next day I was sick in bed. And it was obviously cleansing my body. And then when I did the 21-day Reiki cleanse with my level 1, which didn't end up being 21 days, I did 30 days. I extended it because I was like, I need to do that. I need to make sure I get this done, because I wasn't doing it fully every day. Like, I wasn't doing like 15 minutes every day. So I was like, I'll just do it for longer. And I got sick. I was in bed for like 2-3 days, like sick. Even when I went back to work, I was like, my coworkers were asking me how I was feeling. And I said, I don't feel well. I really don't feel well. And then it went away. But just going back to what you said, with my right hip, the same thing kind of happened. I had this chronic pain because I was trying to train for running, and I was running all the time. I was running like 10 kilometers every day. And I was like, I'm going to do a half marathon. And I started running until my hip started hurting so much that I couldn't run at all. And I rested for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I was like, oh man, there's got to be something more to this. And I think a year went by before I was like, I got an MRI, I got x-rays. There was nothing wrong with me. Absolutely nothing wrong. So I had proven it. First, I'm like that. I have all these physical things come up in my body, but I don't pay attention to them. So I end up going to the doctor and getting all these tests on, like with my hives. I also got a bunch of tests on. I'm not allergic to anything. The same thing with my leg. And until I said, okay, I'm going to go do family constellations. So I've done that with a few physical things that have had happen in my life, including the hives. And I'm not kidding you. About 4 days later, the hip pain was gone, completely gone. And it was an issue of me carrying a burden that wasn't mine. And it was literally holding it in my hip. And I think they said it was on my right. Since it was on my right side, it had to do something with dad or something like that. And it was so true. I literally healed it in that hour session with the family constellation therapist. And I went back for a few other things after that, like chronic wrist pain I had. And they all had something to do with something going on in my life or something I wasn't dealing with. So do what works for you. But for the hives, for me as well, it's so funny how our brain works sometimes. And you think, oh, this is not the first time you've gotten hives. This is like the third or fourth time you've gotten chronic hives. And when have they been? They've been every time you've been going through something super emotional and you're not listening to yourself. So my body's so kind that it actually shows me what is going on. It's like, Lorena, listen to yourself. If you don't listen to yourself, you're just going to make yourself sicker. So I think you need to learn how your body works, how your brain works, how you work, and figure that out. And that's going back to our episode about being present, right? You can't do that unless you're present.
Yeah, totally. That's totally true. Yep. And it's hard. It's hard to be present, especially because you can be either like a full-time mom and dealing with the kids and picking up and dropping off and nap time and sleep time and food time and bath time. Or you can be, you know, someone that's working a really, really high demanding job. And on top of that, you have a relationship and you want to do things with your partner, but you also want to make sure your job but you also want to do something on the side of your job. And life, it gets busy and life gets complicated, and it's really hard sometimes to be present, but that's also part of what anxiety is. It's your body telling you, slow down, be here. You're having an experience as a human being. You're still having a human experience. Don't overwhelm yourself. Don't take in too much. Don't take everything too much at a time, because you can't handle it. And what's the point of being here if you're not learning the things you're here to learn? If you're just bombarding yourself with activities, what are you really learning? Most of the time, if you're bombarded, nothing. And so it's important. Yeah. Part of handling anxiety is going deep into yourself and listening and knowing what is wrong, what's going on, what you need, and how to fix it, and how to move to the next step and be better for yourself. And when you're better for yourself, you're better for those around you, right? So grounding yourself and sustaining your basic needs. When I mean basic needs, I'm not talking about, you know, I need to meet up with this person, and I need to go to the job at this time. I mean, like, basic needs as in, I need my alone time, this amount of time. I need to do this for myself. I need to stop and think about, what is it that I'm feeling? Those are basic needs, body needs, like basic needs. Nutrition, mental stability, emotional stability, and balance.
Yeah, and we can, as humans, I think a lot of times we get so busy with life that we ignore that stuff. I know I do. I totally do. And I find myself feeling stressed, tired, anxious. But I think a good thing to note here is, you know, unfortunately, it is very common for people to get anxiety these days. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way we're living. How we're living so like rushed, multitasking, doing so many things at once. On our phones, on the computer, running out the door, trying to get to appointments on time. You have meetings. It's crazy. Like, if we really step back from all of that and really think about what we're doing, it's just insane. It's not healthy. So I think if you can really analyze your life and say, okay, I live a very busy life. I need time for this, this, and this. So I need to make sure that that's in my calendar, or that people respect that, the people around me respect that and give that to me, because I need it. And with anxiety, I think another thing to note is it will show up differently for everybody. Don't compare yourself to other people, because it's easy for you to take my example or Lucia's example and say, oh, well, then I don't have anxiety. It might be anxiety that you're feeling, or it might be you might be depressed in some way. But I feel like those states of anxiety, depression, panic attacks, whatever, are you not living the present moment. It's you living in the future. It's you worrying about something. It's you not living or being on your true path. So I think if we can start from that point and really sift through our lives and what we're going through and figure out what no longer serves us. And I know that's easier said than done sometimes, and say, oh, this is like, I don't like my job, or I don't like this thing I'm doing. And you just say, okay, I'm going to like quit it. Sometimes you can't do that, but just you acknowledging it sometimes and saying, all right, I think I can do better. Why don't I work on these skills so then I can get a better job? Or it's like taking control back without you overthinking the future, overthinking what's going to happen, or thinking of the worst case scenario, because I think when you get a panic attack, that's what it is. You're thinking of the worst thing happening, and it's never usually going to happen. It's more us thinking it's going to happen. So it's getting stuck in your head. And then also going back to what you said about you being in your situation with, your ex, it's hard. It's really hard when you're in that moment of feeling so low. Like, how do you pull yourself out of that? Sometimes you need help. Sometimes you need to reach out to someone, and that can be a therapist. It could be a doctor. It could be whoever you need that to be, but don't rely on yourself fully when you might need someone to help you get out of that. And I'm not talking about medicine or anything, but I mean at least someone to talk to so they know what you're going through. Because if we don't deal with things, they can get worse. And unfortunately, that does happen, and it's really sad. But I think if we're open enough to really voice what we're going through, you'd be really surprised at how many people are going through the same thing you're going through. It's insane. But we have to have the courage to deal with our shadows, to deal with our issues and recognize them. And then from that point forward, we can really start healing and asking for help. It's hard to deal with things on our own sometimes,
Yeah, totally. So I think that we've kind of covered everything that we wanted to in this episode. Our experiences and whatever things that we did. Is there anything else that you'd want to add before we closed off?
I just want to say how, for me, the panic attacks and anxiety have all been a blessing. They really have been a blessing. They've made me work on myself, look inward, reach out for help when I've always been a person that, since I was little, I didn't want to bother anybody. I tried not to, be a burden or get in anybody's way. And that's also stuff I'm working through, and that has nothing to do with anybody. But it made me listen to myself and really pay attention. It's like, no, you're going through so much right now. It doesn't matter what anyone else is going through. You need to listen to yourself, and you need to look inward and ask for help. Like, you need to tell someone what's going on. And for me, the breaking point was when I got that massive attack of vertigo where I was yelling for Mom. And she came and we went to the doctor, and the doctor's like, you're going through this, you're trying to get over this huge bridge, and you need help. You need someone to help you through this. And that's where that was the point where I realized this was way bigger than just me keeping my mouth shut and not saying anything to anybody. And that's when I realized, okay, this is also a lesson for me to be vulnerable and to allow other people to help me, because I don't know what to do. I am completely lost. I don't know how to deal with this. And my fear in my mind was always being so stuck in that and not ever being able to get out of those panic attacks. Like literally the 4 years or 5 years, I don't remember how long it was, that I was going through it. In the back of my mind, I kept thinking, what if I have to live like this the rest of my life? I'll die. Like, I will literally die. Like, it is so stressful on my body, stressful on my brain. Like, I couldn't live. I tried to live a normal life, but constantly worried about the next panic attack coming up and when it was going to happen. It's just so stressful. So for me, it was really a wake-up call. And it's a blessing in disguise that it all happened, how it happened, and when it happened, and the people that showed up to really recognize what was going on. And that also led me to all these different healers, because that's how I went to the Akashic Records. Like, that's how I got my first reading, because part of my issues and part of the things I asked about were my panic attacks and my anxiety and where it was coming from. So it all had a reason. And if we can only just stop for a minute and really realize that a lot of these hardships that we're going through will lead us to something bigger and will lead us to grow and to become the people we need to become, and to go down this spiritual path, this higher and highly aligned path that we can all learn more from, and we can grow and become these people that we need to become in this life, and what our souls essentially want us and need us to become, so we can get our message out or help other people or do whatever we need to do in this life. And I think that's important to recognize.
Yeah, very well put.
So with that said, I will close off the episode. We really hope you enjoyed all this information that we put out. And I know this is probably a very interesting topic for a lot of you, and maybe something a lot of you are going through. So hopefully this has helped you and maybe made you feel a little bit less alone. And obviously, whatever you need to do to heal, to grow, and to get over this hurdle, if this is what you're going through, definitely seek help if you need help. But I do think everything is a blessing in disguise in this life. So we hope you all have a great week, and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hey everybody, we really hope you enjoyed that episode about anxiety and spirituality. I feel like this episode hit home for me, because this is something that I have gone through, and it's been a big part of my life and still is. Anxiety still kind of creeps up on me every now and then. So I hope any of you that are listening or that have listened to this episode can relate and have gotten something out of this, and maybe can help you in some way to not feel alone, or to really just connect with someone that has gone through that and can understand how you feel. We also think that everything does happen for a reason. Everything that we go through is, especially hardships, are there to teach us something and for us to grow. So I think it's shifting our mindset and seeing everything as a blessing, and seeking help when needed. I think that's crucial and very important. And don't ever feel alone. Don't feel like people don't understand you. There's always someone that can help you. So make sure that you listen to yourself. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions or have any topics you want us to touch on. Be sure to follow us on Instagram. Our Instagram handle's @soul_tribe_podcast. And next week, we're very excited because we have our first interview, and we know you're going to love it. And part of it's about Akashic Records and some other really cool spiritual stuff. So stay tuned. Make sure you're following us. And we hope to see you on the next episode. Bye, guys. Have a good week.